and welcome back to Green Hill Garage. In today's video, we're going to be tearing back into the Kawasaki Mule. I don't know if you guys saw or not, but we did the initial diagnosis, and it's been sitting outdoors for a while, so definitely not going to be able to make it run just as it is. As you can see, we've got dirt over everything, so we're going to need to disassemble and thoroughly clean this entire engine, which is what I had planned to do anyway. Basically, when we pulled this, we had found, I don't know, I have a head bolt on, so that should be locked. These cylinders are completely fuel washed, and yeah, the pistons are completely in rings, are worn, completely worn out. So we're not building compression, and oil is getting inside and fouling out the chambers. So today we're going to pull out the engine out of the frame, since it'll be much easier to work on it up on a stand rather than down in here. I'm 6'3", somewhere in there. So yeah, it's not going to be fun working this slow. So we're going to pull the motor out. But to do that, we're going to start by pulling this cover here for the centrifugal clutch and belt. We're also going to pull all the wiring, everything that plugs in. The good news is it's all connected with these plug-ins, so we don't have to cut anything. Yeah, so it should be fairly straightforward. We're going to disconnect the drive shaft, I think, probably to get that out. But yeah, we'll go ahead, set you guys a time lapse, and we'll get started stripping everything down. So what we did here in order to get this to hold in place is I took a ratchet strap, looped it around, and then looped it over here through the frame. Could have used a thicker ratchet strap, but this one held. And then that allows us, it holds that in place, because even with the brakes locked and in gear, it was still spinning and pushing the whole transmission forward. So this strap holds everything in place. We're able to screw it down. Just a little trick I thought I'd show you guys. We'll get back to pulling off these pulleys. Okay, so we're ready to pull the engine out. Due to our lack of a primary clutch puller, we're going to have to pull it with the clutch still in place. So what that'll involve basically is we loosened up our plastic, disconnected entirely from the transmission. There's this brace right here. It's two 12mm bolts right down there. Got them knocked loose. Then there's four, I think they were 12s. I forget now. I thought they were 12s. We'll call them 12s. Four 12mm bolts on each corner of a motor mount under here. And that's what all that holds that in. I really wish we could get this out. In fact, we may go ahead and do that. Let's see. That's a 13. What'd you do with the... I set that 12 around here somewhere. I know, Joshua. Where did our 12 go? what happens. I know I've got a 12 sitting here. Maybe we'll just try and pull it, not run into that oil. Could even try to use it as a handle. Okay, so gotta be sure all our wires are clear. Loop that down over that way. Loop that over here. What do we got? Oh, we got starter cable. That is held on by. Okay, we're gonna need our 12mm for that. So we got those starter cable and the grounding cable off. I just put the nuts back in place so we won't lose them. It's generally what I do, unless we have to tear it off, and we'll put them in bags and label them. But whenever you can, I try to just leave the bolts in place. So now we're ready to lift this thing up, put it on our table. Our steel table's all cleared off. I do not remember if we drained the oil on this. I think I did, but I do not remember. So we'll assume I didn't. And go see, once we get on the table, try to drain the oil out. So lift it up. I think it weighs maybe in the neighborhood of 75 pounds. Maybe less, maybe closer to 65, but yeah, just set it right up there. Got a little bushing trapped up back here. Let's see, what have I got? Okay, there we go. Just had one of these little studs trapped. When we bought this mule, we replaced the belt, and a mouse had actually gotten in here. There still remains of mouse and whatnot, fur-wise. They built a home inside of this, and yeah, they got trapped in here, burned up, and got the belt all burned out. So we ended up replacing the belt. So we have a new belt. We didn't buy a new belt, but we have the new belt from last time. So I don't think we'll be needing to buy a new one of those. The clutches worked fine. I figured out the other day though, we tried to pull this, and as you can see, we broke off a chunk. So we'll see. I've got a spare clutch assembly running around, but we may try to fix this one. I've got the piece right here, and I think we can weld it. But if we can't, then we've got a spare clutch. We can just throw that on. Just ordered today. I realized we're gonna need a clutch puller. Yeah, that piece should fit in right about like that. So I think I can just weld it in. Haven't welded aluminum before, but we can give it a try. It's always worth it to save when you can. But yeah, we need the puller. The puller is big long threaded assembly. I have Polaris pullers, but I don't have a Kawasaki puller because I've never pulled apart a Kawasaki. So we're gonna go ahead and buy. I've ordered it. It was 33 bucks on eBay. It's well worth it. If you got one of these mules, you can buy one. Just keep it in your toolbox, and it makes changing belts a lot easier. I prefer to change belts without pulling clutches, but if you need to, then you'll always have the tool. So now we're gonna move around to the front of the engine here. We've got our cover. We're gonna pull this cover off. Under this cover should be our stator and everything that way. Let's see. I think we've just got an oil sensor and some other stuff back here. We'll try to leave as much of the wiring intact and get some good photos of this, since I could not find a manual for one of these. We're doing all of this just off of pictures and memory. So we're gonna take a lot of pictures so we remember how it'll go. And then, yeah, we'll be able to tear it open. I believe this case splits, but I think in order for it to split, we're gonna need to pull this clutch, because I believe the case splits along the back. And from what I can feel, sorry guys, it's bound up a little. From what I can feel, the main bearings are fine, rod bearings feel good. So we didn't order new ones, and I don't think we'll need to get new ones. What I have are just a set of brand new Namura pistons and rings. They're standard bore. Let me spin this down. When you go along, you can kind of feel there's a ridge. We'll get out a measuring tool and be able to measure, but there's no ridge. So this didn't wear down far. It just polished all the cross hatching off this cylinder bore. So what we'll do, we've got our cylinder hone here. It's a real cheap one. I picked it up on eBay for 17 bucks, but it ought to last long enough to hone out these cylinders at least. Yeah, we'll just go ahead, pull these pistons, and when we have everything cleaned off, we can put some rags under there, keep the grinding material out, and then just hone these and get a good crosshatch pattern on there. And what that crosshatch pattern will do, as opposed to the polished pattern, the crosshatch will retain the oil on these cylinder walls instead of just letting the oil sit there and hydroplane right off. These rings, since they're worn out, they're letting oil by, and that's why we're getting all this in. If you saw our diagnosis video, then I explained that what happened was this clean patch of piston is where we had fuel and oil basically getting in and contaminating the chamber. You can tell this stuff here, it's oil. So what is happening was these really shiny bores and worn out piston rings were letting oil into the chamber. It was getting up in here, and then when it would fire, it contaminated the chamber, contaminated the spark plugs, and it's even worse on this side. If you come around here, you can see that this was really polished and washed out by, it's our clicker pump failed. So when the clicker pump failed, it shoved too much fuel in. The fuel got in, contaminated the oil, and then the oil with contaminated with fuel was able to wash out the piston rings and cylinder walls and cause out this spot. You can see why it's so clean. It's fuel washing. So yeah, that'll be it for now, and we're gonna need to wait on our clutch puller to pull the rest. So we'll get that ordered. Well, I got ordered. We'll wait till it comes, and we'll see you guys when we're ready to pull the engine apart. Okay, so while we're waiting on our part to arrive to pull the primary clutch, we're gonna go ahead, take this cylinder head and completely tear it down, and then allow it to soak in. I've got a mixture of dish soap here. We're just using Palmolive because that's what we have, and Simple Green. Just mix those in. Really works well for degreasing. So we're going to begin by pulling the spark plug. Now I've already loosened it, but basically what I just used was 13/16 wrench and yeah, 13/16 spark plug. All Kawasaki Mules that I know of have a 13/16 spark plug. So yeah, those will be part of the tools you'll need. Just unscrew the spark plug, and these are fine soaking. We're going to give them a try. I'll be able to test them with a multimeter afterwards to see if they're any good still. But they should be. They're just really fouled up with all that oil. So we'll go ahead, drop that one in to soak, and we'll begin now. We'll start with taking our rocker assembly off. Now on this head, it doesn't matter which side we pull first. On the other head, there was a thermostat, or not thermostat, a temperature sensor that was in the way of one side. So you're going to want to pull the side closest to that so you can pull the pin away from it. Unless you want to pull the sensor. I didn't care to pull the sensor, so just pulled that one closest to it so you could slide it away from the sensor. On this one, there's no sensor, so it doesn't matter which one you pull off. Now, ideally, you have a set of snap ring pliers, and I do, but not with any heads small enough to actually get these ones off. So we're just going to make do. I got a little awl here, and a small flat blade screwdriver used as a lever. Just going to find the hole there, lift up, and pry, which is easier said than done. Let me work on this one since this one's a little closer to the edge. And you get the edge to pop off. Then we'll feed our awl in on this side. And then just start carefully prying along like a tire in a way. And of course it pops off, but we're able to recover it. So we just got a clip here. This will then push all the way out. And these rocker arms are identical. I cannot find a specific difference in them. So it doesn't matter. Sorry about the dog. Yeah, we'll just take both of our rocker arms. They're both identical. they don't face either way. So we'll just go ahead and drop them in, drop our little pin in. And now these can get kind of stuck. That hammering motion that these valves have to go through is pretty rough. So sometimes what you can do, just tap lightly. Once you feel it kind of bounce, then you know it's free. There you go, you can kind of hear that. So what I like to do is do this over the bucket. We'll just go ahead, and these springs are soft enough, you can just use your thumbs. If they were any stiffer, we have a valve spring compressor, but it's not really needed on these. So just lift up and then let those keepers, 1, 2, fall out straight into our water. And then we've got one washer here for the spring. There's no bottom washer, so then we'll just drop them in, and then we can take our valve. And it appears our seals are okay, but I've got some spare ones, so we'll probably throw on new valves. They feel good. I'm not feeling any binding. There is a little bit of play, but not a gob. We'll measure it. Another thing to look at, guys, is see how well they were sealing. I'm not seeing any missed spots, so it looks like our valves were sealing good. Keep in mind, we did do a valve job on this when we first got it, so these valves, I would not expect them to have any issues, but it's always good to check whenever you're tearing down an engine. So we'll drop this valve in here, take our little C-clip, drop it in down there, and now you can take a look also at these valve seats and look at them for any signs of anything binding. Aside from some dirt in there, I don't see anything that would indicate any kind of failure at the valve. So we're good there. Now we'll take our next one. You can see it popped loose. So get it up over the water. And this one's a little sticky. So there goes one, there goes the other. So now we're free. We've got our other, same deal. These are identical for both intake and exhaust. Just a single washer with a spring. We'll drop them over. And this was a brand new valve seal that I put in when we did that valve job. This one was completely torn off when we got it, so I put a new one on. We'll put new ones on all of them, and that should solve some of our oil control issues, but mainly the rebuild will do that. So check again, kind of feel for wiggle. These ones don't really feel like they have any. Another good sign is that it's nice and clean here, and it's got oil, not gasoline, on the valve guide and valve stem. There is some carbon on here, which I don't really care to see on an intake, but it is what it is. Again, we'll look at our valve seat, and this one we actually have a little bit of pitting on there. It's not that bad, but there is a little bit of pitting there. So this one's going to need to be lapped. So we'll set this one aside in our water to soak. And now we can take a look at our valve seat and see what we can see. I don't see any pitting on the valve seat. This valve seat looks pretty good to me. So now what we can do, just kind of, aside from any inspections, I don't see cracks in this anywhere. This did not fail head gasket wise or anything like that, so I don't see any blowout marks there. What else can I show you guys? Aside from just being dirty, I think it's good. So we'll just set it inside. This is the intake. This is a coolant passage. On the other one, there's a thermostat. So I didn't pull the thermostat, but you could and get it cleaner. I had pulled that thermostat last time, and it still looks pretty clean inside of these. So we're not going to worry about the coolant passages too much. But primarily getting the intake, getting all the valve area cleaned, and getting our combustion chamber clean will be our primary objective. So I'll set this in. The other head is soaking in here, so I'll move it aside and then just lower this thing in gently so it's all covered up. And we'll just let these sit, guys. This is hot water with dish soap and Simple Green. So we'll let it soak for about 30 minutes, and then we'll be able to pull it out and scrub it down. So we'll see you guys then. Okay, so we got it all cleaned up. Just use a set of bristle brushes. Toothbrush could work. I'm trying to think where I set them. I set them somewhere around here. But basically, I just brushed it out, brushed out all the chambers, and just ran a light coat of oil. I also ran brushes through both valve stems and through this rocker arm. cleaned out everything as best we could. It's drastically improved. So now we went ahead and cleaned up our valves, and I didn't see any marks on them that would indicate them leaking or bent or warped or anything. So we're going to consider them good. So now we're going to take this head, we'll flip it over upside down, and we'll take one valve at a time. You can start with any valve, but we'll just start with this one. And looks like what we need to do is grab our oil here, move just a little bit. There we go. Okay. And you can just kind of feel it smoothly slip along. And then we'll pop it in. This is the only, I replaced one valve seal on the other head. This head is the only one that we replaced last time. This one felt good, so I wasn't going to bother replacing it. So now we've got it in. We'll take our spring, set it over, and these springs are identical either way, so that doesn't really matter which side you set it on. Just take it, set it over like that. Grab it over, and since these are real soft, you can just take your thumbs, drop it over. So now we've got our two keepers, which can always be kind of an adventure, but you'll just take the keeper, and if you look at them, they're actually kind of conical, or kind of a cone shape to them, and the taller side of the cone, well, I'm not sure how to explain this, but basically the slant goes in to the valve. So here, I'll grab that seat again. We'll compress it. I'll take our valve seat here, take our little keeper, drop the keeper in, and there's a little ring on the keeper that'll hold it in. Now one will hold it long enough for you to figure out the next part of holding the other one. So it's always a delicate process with these springs. Alright, looks like we got it both in. Just press. Sorry guys, my thumbs are blocking it, but yeah, just get that right in like so. So there you have it. We got that one in. Now the whole valve is set on a spring. Take a light dab of oil. And then we're ready for the next one. So this one, same process as the last one. And so we'll just go ahead, I'll put it in, and then we'll show you guys how to get the rocker arms in. Okay, so next step is put in the rocker assembly. This head is not especially picky because it doesn't have a thermostat on it. Other side, like I said, here I'll actually grab this other head for you guys. This is a head I did off camera just to get it assembled so I'd know what I was doing. Basically I assembled it. You can't pull it out all the way this way unless you pull this off, and I didn't want to pull this off. I have broken them before, and this one is not bad, so I don't want to spend money that I don't have to. So what you do is you pull this clip out and pull it out that way, and then the opposite, you push it in and then put that clip in. So on this one, we'll take it, lube up the journal, and they're kind of stiff to go in. I probably should drop a little oil down there. There we go. And you can see they slide around really well. So now we'll lube up one of our rockers. Take the rocker arm assembly, just kind of get it to spin, and see if we can get it to slide. So now we've got it slid over here. We're able to take our next one, throw a light dab of oil on the inside of it. And if you were doing a brand new engine, then break-in oil would be recommended. Since this is a used motor, then it doesn't really need it. So now we'll take our clip, and this is always the tricky part, getting this clip to fit on. So we'll take it, and then I'll take my little screwdriver here. We'll see if we can get this all at once. Just get it kind of fed on there and clipped in. So I just want to knock that in, and there we have it. So now we have both of our rocker arms assembled, and it's always smart to throw a little dab of oil right here. That way when the engine first starts up, it'll start feeding oil in to both sides of the rockers. These are not oiled through the push rods. Not 100% sure where the oil feed is on this, but yeah, it's not through the push rods. So yeah, always smart to lube these rocker arms a little extra. Another thing we'll do is we'll take a little shot of oil, put it right there at the top of those valves. Be sure those seats are all good and lubed up. And there you have it. We have it so we can see. We can push either valve open. There's no bind. We can move either sides there. They're not binding. So we're all good. So this head is done. The heads are done. And so now all we have to do is wait until we get our part, and then we'll be able to pull the flywheel off. So we'll see you guys then. Okay, so it's the next probably about 2 or 3 days after our last cut. What I did is I got our clutch puller tool, and what it does, I wish I had the clutch on here. I ended up pulling it. It's kind of a hassle, but it wasn't near as big of a hassle as what we had turned it into. Basically, you just lube up your threads, sleeves all the way in, and then just hand thread those threads in, and this will slip through. This side's smaller than your threads in here that will actually hold the primary clutch down. This will go to the back, and then just the action of threading will lift the primary clutch off. As you can see, it's kind of a cone, so once it starts to break free, you can pretty much just lift it off by hand. So now that we got that broken off, we're able to pull our plastic cover, and now we're ready to split the engine. So we'll begin by pulling our, I can't remember what this bracket, I think it's just the engine transmission brace. Pull this, put this aside, then we can pull our dipstick. Dipstick is attached with two 12mm bolts. You want to keep everything in order of where it was. Just lift that dipstick up. And I'm not 100% sure if this dipstick is the right depth, so we're going to need to check our dipstick, because I'll show you guys. When you look at this, the piece that's supposed to hold it in depth-wise can move. So we're definitely going to need to look at that. As rusty as it is, we may just go ahead and get a new dipstick to eliminate any possible doubts. Especially with this new engine build, we would hate to have something like low oil kill it. Something as simple as that. So now we'll go ahead and pull the water pump, and this has got some 10mm on it, but we'll break loose the 12s first. Let's see, some of these are not the same. They all are 12s, so we'll just start laying them out here on the table. So these are 10s, so I'll swap the socket out if I can get it off. This has been an ongoing pet peeve of mine. We'll just keep going with the 12s. So we got another 12 here. I can't even tell you guys how much this little impact wrench has improved my life. I remember just hand unthreading these kind of bolts. Will slide this up to the edge so I can reach these. These are longer ones, so I'll set these off to the side. Now we gotta swap it. Let's see, what do I got?
That was close.
It was close.
Almost went into the pan.
It's the one thing I haven't liked about this particular impact gun is it's pretty well glued on. So now pull our 10s for the water pump. lift off our water pump, and as you can see, this gasket's toast. We're going to need a new gasket or some Permatex. Either will work. You can see our impeller, it's just a little plastic impeller. So now let's see if we can figure out what exactly holds on the rest of this. Looking for bolts. Chunks of dirt in here, not at all helpful. Grab the old pry bar and give it a light pry, kind of find out where it's attached. It looks like it's coming apart, but it's got oil still in it, so lean it out over the edge a little. Let me find one of my, got a bigger screwdriver around here somewhere. Alright, so we got the case split. I'm just going to take this case and very carefully and gently slide it off the shaft. Now, as you can see, we've got a series of gears here. I believe there's some kind of idler gears. They don't look like they turn. This is just the water pump. And down here, I believe is the governor. So now we have these pulled apart. You can see here's this chunk of rag. It was down there in the bottom. So I'll set this over here off to the side. And I'll take the motor and I can tip it. Get the rest of that oil to drain out of there.
You could also take the filter off.
Yeah.
Are you getting a new one?
Oh yeah.
So that was gasoline soaked.
Oh yeah. We're gonna want new everything filter wise. So here, bring the camera up. You can see this kind of a black sludge layer. This is probably just over time with old oil. As you can see, it smears, so it's definitely been there for a little while. And it wipes off. I don't see any big metal debris in it, so that's a good sign that we don't have metal loose inside of it. So we can go along, we can look at our gasket surface. I don't see any obvious signs of failure along our case gasket. So now we have access. I'm not sure if we want to pull our cam or not, but we're going to look for a timing mark. And on these, there's a timing mark right here. It's this one circle. So we're going to take our crankshaft, spin it over real gently until this lines up. There should be some kind of a mark. I believe it's this keyway. You shall see. Yep. Okay guys, there's a little dot there and it lines up with the keyway on that, and that's what our cam will line up with. Now these lifters, I'm not 100% sure how to get them out, but I don't believe it'll be all that necessary to get them out. Because if you remember, we're not doing a rebuild on the top end of the engine, just a rebuild of these pistons. So now we have access to both of our connecting rods. We'll go ahead, pop them off. Let's see, I think they're 12. Let's see if they're 12 millimeter. Let's see. We're gonna need a little more dedicated 12 than that. Let me grab our socket and the breaker bar. So yeah, we'll get our 12 millimeter socket. Gotta kind of brace up the engine. Just break that loose core of turn. Get that loose. Just turn them each. Once you get them past a certain point, it doesn't matter, but it's a good idea to loosen them one at a time at about a quarter of a turn at a time. Because if you don't, you could run the risk of either cracking the connecting rod cap there or bending something. And we don't want to do that because we didn't buy new parts. And you don't want to buy new parts if you don't have to buy new parts. So now we can loosen our connecting rod cap bolts. And I don't know the torque spec on these at the moment, but when we reassemble, I will get the torque specs because we're going to want to know them. If I had to guess, I'd say probably in the 35 foot-pound mark, if I had to guess at the moment. That's what they at least broke loose at. So we're doing the connecting rod closest to us just because it's easiest to get to. Now we got to find something to tap it loose with. We'll grab a small mechanic's hammer. So we'll just tap and get right there on the groove. Just lightly tap. Get this connecting rod cap to come down. We'll be able to take our rag, our connecting rod. Now if we look at this, these don't actually have a replaceable bearing, but they look pretty good to me. They could stand for a polish if I had, well, I don't really have a specific way to polish them. We'll probably get some cork and just rub it with some cork. That'll clean it up nicely. So we'll set this 1, 2 so that we'll remember. And then we'll be able to push and rotate the motor. We can give this piston a push, come out through the top. There we have one Kawasaki Mule piston. And it looks like these rings are kind of worn. I see some wear on the skirt, some scoring. It's not too bad though. So we're gonna go ahead. I'll set this with this connecting rod cap, and then we'll get ready to pull the next one. So the next one is a lot easier to access now that we pulled our main one there, or the one in front, I should say. I'm able to reach these. And that. Good. Turn that one. You can turn it again another half turn. Turn this another half turn. And then from here we'll be able to just use a rag. And these sockets, they get pretty slippery once they're soaked in oil. So that's why I just use a rag here. And then once you get to a certain point, it's faster to just use your fingers on these bolts. And I can see, just looking at this crankshaft, we've got some old burnt on oil deposits. And I think what we're going to do, just for the sake of being able to say we did it, and because this motor sat outside in the dust for so long, we're going to pull the cam and the top end here and figure out what we need to clean in there. And if we can't get it pulled, or it's going to be like really hard and not worth it necessarily to pull, like that, then what we'll do is we'll just spray in and clean off everything. And I'll set the main cap here, set it on the table. I'll just slap it. And give this piston a push. a little sticky. There we go. We have Kawasaki Mule piston number 2. This one looks like it has less scoring. The rings though show some signs of wear. There's some scratches on the rings. And yeah, they're just kind of worn out. They've lost a lot of their diameter. Our oil control ring wasn't stuck in place. I didn't expect it to be, but it's not stuck in place, so that's a good sign. So we'll just set this piston down here, and we can check our crank main journals. Well, not main journals. Check our connecting rod journals. Feel along them. I don't feel any ridge, so I think they did pretty well. Now we'll be able to take a more in-depth look at our cylinder bores, and we're going to get ready to hone out our cylinder bores. So, go here. Everything seems to roll smoothly. I don't feel any resistance. However, here to bring the camera in closer, what you can see is this motor did kind of sit with some water inside the crankcase, and this water, well, it may not have been like pooled water. It was definite condensation, and it just sat and was able to rust on the edges of these gears. Another thing I did notice is this heat mark here, right on the crank, like an overheated connecting rod there. You can see the heat marks there. I do not see the heat mark on the other side, so I think this will be fine. Play is minimal, so we'll just probably leave that other end alone. So now we'll go ahead and get the cylinder bores honed out. Okay, so now we're ready to hone the cylinder bore. Got our drill hitched up. And this is just a cheap little cylinder bore hone that you can get off of eBay for like 17 bucks. I've used these on lawnmowers, never used it on an ATV or a UTV, but we're gonna find out how it works. I've gone through like 3 of these. They're really cheap. They don't last very long, but this one's brand new, so we'll see if it'll last long enough to get in. So we'll let it get out, kind of get everything in. Keep in mind I did oil this with WD-40. We're going to need to add a little more lube. Throw on a little motor oil this time. It looks like it's scratching a little too much. You can always back off, throw a little motor oil in. The oil's coming loose. Maybe there's not. That's ridiculous. Dang drill will hang all up. Alright, so now we can take a look at our work, see what kind of cross hatching we made or didn't make.
Did you just use the last towel?
Okay, so it looks like we got a fairly good scratch, but we need just a little more. This spring is not working all that well. I'll back off the spring tension a little, and then we'll lube up these stones. As you can see, our stones are just flying apart. These things never last long. no matter how many or how gentle you are with them. They just fly apart, which is what they're supposed to do, but it'd be nice if they lasted a little longer. And we'll lube up our cylinder. Try to tighten up our drill a little. It's annoying that our drill wouldn't hold. Now we'll take a look at our cylinder marks. This should be a lot better. Looks like we're starting to get a pretty good scratch going, so I think that's about as good as it'll get. We'll go over it one more time just to be certain, and I think we're ready to call it good for honing on this cylinder bore. The next one will be like the other, so we'll make one more pass and then we'll be ready to get our new pistons out. So we got all our cylinder bores honed. As you can see, we have a nice scratch to them. That'll allow the oil retention, so those rings don't just hydroplane right over everything. So next thing we're gonna do, I got a pad of Scotch-Brite. We're gonna go ahead and clean off the deck surface. As you can see, Scotch-Brite's kind of aggressive. You don't want to go too heavy, so we'll knock this all down to bare, and then we'll take a ruler or straight edge, and then we'll be able to see if we have any warpage, and we can deck this if we have to, which we probably will, considering I did not deck it when we did the heads last time. We did not have any blown cylinder head gaskets, but better be on the safe side. So we're gonna head and we'll go and clean it off, and we'll get back to you once we have both sides clean. All right, so we're back. It's about a day after you saw us on our last section. We're now ready to go ahead and drop in or take the old piston off, put our brand new Namura piston in. This one, I don't know if you'll be able to focus on that, but it goes and it fits for the 2500, the 2510, the 3000, the 3010, and the 4000 4010. It is a 75.95 millimeter piston, comes with brand new rings. I went ahead and checked the end gap. End gap for these pistons is supposed to be around 10 to 25 thousandths. Both rings were at 60 thousandths, so they were completely worn out. Another thing I wanted to show you, and I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but the oil control ring right here. See how it's kind of bronze colored? And then right here it looks like steel colored. Basically, this was just wearing into the cylinder walls, and it had lost all of its retaining ability to squeegee off the oil off the cylinder walls. And that was because of gasoline. Gasoline just caused everything to cut through, and there was no film of protection that the oil would normally provide. So when installing these pistons, it's critical to remember that this arrow points to the front of the engine. Now, the front of the engine is with the flywheel. That's how they define the front of the engine on this. So I'll pull off everything. So yesterday I wanted to make sure I had everything right, so I did this piston on its own. This piston is going to face like this, I believe. Yeah, that's where the arrow faces. So keep in mind these short sides face out. If you tried flipping it around this way, then this side will catch right up against the base of the cylinder wall, and we would not want that. It wouldn't run. The stroke would actually work. We tried it and the stroke did work, but it was catching on there. So it's pretty easy to tell that when you're off. But it's going to face like this. Arrow faces to the front. So we'll just go ahead and pop off the little C-clip. Gotta be careful. Some of these C-clips can be kind of nasty. These ones feel worn out, so don't think we're going to get any issues. So, and remember it's facing this way. Take the pin and piston out, and we'll just set this piston like this so that we can remember where we're at. Now we're going to take our brand new Namura piston, They wrap it in this plasticky paper wrap. And this is a beautiful piston. Keep that tipped up. It's a hyper-eutectic instead of just plain cast, so it comes with this coating. It's high temperature, it's more fracture resistant than coating. It's not as durable as a forged piston, but for this application, this is much better than forged because forged actually does not wear as well. Forged is meant for short-term, high horsepower applications. This is going to be long-term and very low power. This whole motor, I believe, only makes like 23 horsepower, 24 horsepower. It's so pretty low for a twin-cylinder 620. So we'll go ahead now, and this comes with the new pin. Let's check our arrow. And this one has a very small arrow. I'm not sure if you'll be able to catch that on camera. A very small arrow, so we'll face our arrow this way. Then we'll take our new pin. See if I can open this with just my bare hands. Oh, there we go. Take our new pin. This is a little stiff, so oh, there it goes. Alright, so we'll slide that in like that. And I'll grab some oil here. We'll lube all this up good before we call it. And assembly lube, you could use assembly lube. I've always used motor oil, never had an issue. So yeah, we'll just stick with motor oil for the moment. And now we've got those pushed through. Now it's time to start assembling rings. We'll skip the clips for the moment, just because clips are kind of a pain in the butt. So we'll just cut to the chase here with the rings, and then I'll show you guys what I try to do with clips. So rings are going to come packaged. The way that Namura has all this set up is top to bottom, you have all your rings laid out. So we'll lay out this ring. Let's see, I can show you guys. So these two are the oil control rings. I guess they didn't lay them out in any specific order. But this ring with the shiny outside layer is the top ring. Gotta remember that because it's the same thickness as the second ring. So this will go on top, and then these oil control rings are their own thing. So we'll work our way from bottom to top on this setup. Let's see. I'm gonna have you unload, kitty cat. Unload. Gotta need more focus than that. So when you look at these oil control rings, they've got these little catch knobs on the back, and they're gonna catch on each of these rings. So let's see. We'll load our main oil control spring assembly around. It's pretty loose, so it's really easy to do. We'll come from the bottom with the first ring. You want to be very careful not to break these. Also, these ends really want to dig into the skirt on the piston, so you kind of got to lift them. Make sure that they don't. Just kind of walk them across so you don't scrape the skirt up. A little scraping on the skirt isn't going to kill anything, but we try to keep any the nicks and scratches to a minimum. And there we have our bottom one fed in. So now we're going to bring our next oil control ring from the top, and we'll bring it almost 180 degrees opposite to help oil control. Some people, they clock their rings, so like hands on a clock, they have a position for one ring and a position for another. For these rings, it seems like 180 degrees does the best, provides the best oil control. So we get this all tilted out. So now we got our ring in there. Now we've got our shiny ring, and we'll go on top. We'll do the dull ring as the second ring. Lay that in. These ones are kind of stiff, but just take our time. And it looks like we had that one bite in on us. Managed to jump out of its groove and into the first groove. So let me just keep kind of working it out. Take a little screwdriver, kind of help pry. So we got that ring all straightened out. That took a little work, but we managed to get it off without breaking it. These rings from Namura come, they're a little stiff, so they're going to need lube. But before we do that, we'll lay in our top ring. Top ring is the shiny outside. It's basically a hardened coating on it. Kind of help dissipate some heat, last a little longer. Now what I've found for these rings, facing them exactly 180 degrees opposite has worked really well. The top ring is the easiest, and what I'll just do is lay it along in the groove. Just get it to slide into the groove is the hard part. Actually, the gap for these rings is not exceptionally wide. And I'll just kind of roll it around. Piston ring installation tool might help. I've never had one, so I don't know if it would help or not, but there we go. The rings are in. So now we'll take our oil, lube up everything, kind of massage it back and forth. And then run some more oil basically over the entire ring and seating surface. I don't want these to be good and lubed up. For startup, this oil is going to kind of drain off. Startup assembly would stay a little more tacky, I suppose, but I've never had any issues. I've rebuilt a GABA ATVs and put new pistons in. Never had an issue with a dry start killing it. Reason I know is I've had a couple of motors where I had to pull them apart again, and the piston wasn't torn up at all. So yeah, I know that it works, at least on ATVs. A little different story for cars, especially if you have a camshaft or something that's one of those flat tappet cams, and you definitely want assembly lube with good high zinc. Now, we didn't put a new camshaft in, so we don't need any extra lube there. Any good quality oil will help, or will work. So now we've got all our rings in, it's time to get our piston clips in. And these guys are a pain, so I'm going to put in the first one for you guys. I don't know that I'll be able to get the second one in a decent amount of time. These suckers, I haven't found any particularly easy way to put them in. And kind of just, some of them are really easy, some of them are really hard. They're these little wire locks, so we'll set them down on our clean paper there. And I've been using just my fingers and one of these flat screwdrivers every now and again. A set of needle nose pliers can work, but most of the time it's been just kind of a hassle getting these in. So I'll just press it in there, kind of come up with that, slide it down. Oh, we missed it. Just kind of pry it in like you would a tire or something, I suppose. Yeah, this is one of those clips that's just going to fight us. Doesn't help that I have fingers that are all oily, but the whole piston's oily, so I'm not really going to be able to help anything there. Alright, so we got it in, and then we just need to get it pressed into the groove like so. Now that's in the groove, it's locked. I'm not sure if you'll be able to catch that it's in. So we'll push the pin all the way over, and that'll give us room on this other side to put the other wire lock in. And go ahead, see if we can get this one pressed in a little quicker. A lot of the times it just kind of is what it is. Some of them are fast, some of them aren't. Clip got bound up there. Every now and again those ends are pretty close to each other, so they can hit each other at the end. This one's gonna fight us. Ooh, I think we got it. Come on, come on. There we go. Alright, so we'll just kind of work that into that groove. And there we have it. We got both pins in. So now I'll take our rag. This one's fairly dust free. And we'll just wipe everything off piston wise. Top isn't that critical, but it looks nice. So take that, wipe off our bearing surfaces. We'll wipe off our crankshaft here. Then we'll lube crankshaft journal. Then we'll take our little connecting rod journal here. These bolts are faced upside down, so I'll just take them, pull them up, and we'll wipe this down really good. The in-between of these, right where these main surfaces are, you want them to be good and dry. You don't want oil on them because it'll mess with the torque reading. So get them lubed up, get this journal lubed right in here. And then we'll be able to set these over. And that's how it's going to sit. It's going to sit with the short side facing out, piston arrow faces forward. So I've got a little ring compressor that we're going to use. And this one's not a very good quality one, but it's the only ring compressor I have. So I'll grab our oil can. I already cleaned out the cylinder bores, so they're good to go. Could give them an extra wipe just for good measure. We have a very dusty environment here in the shop. These are not ideal engine building conditions, but it's either done's better than perfect in my opinion. So this is what we're going to do for this one. So we got oil lube there. I'm going to throw some more lube on our rings since we did wipe off this piston. Lube everything up. We'll take our piston assembly, slide it in. And these are a tight fit, these Namuras. We'll check our connecting rod, be sure that it's going to make it. We can even turn our crankshaft a little to be sure that it's going to meet. And then we'll take our piston ring compressor here, slide it and be sure it's around all four sides or all sides. And then we can kind of work it in. Let me grab, let's see, got a hammer. Here we go. We'll just kind of, so then when you encounter resistance, you're going to want to find out, and this is actually not a very good piston ring compressor. It's kind of flexible. Let's check and be sure we're not finding here. Lift it off. Check again, see what's actually catching. It looks like we're close on that one ring, so we'll come again, tighten it down. Something bounced, but I didn't see what. We can actually use, let's see what else I'm heavy. There's something heavy here to kind of, so when we encounter something solid, we want to look and see what's causing the bind, because there's always something causing a bind. It's never nothing causing a bind. I don't see what exactly would be binding. Let me check that ring. Yeah, the ring is free. The ring's not stuck. So give it another go. We'll reposition our, and this is as tight as this little cheap piston ring compressor will go, so You can even use an old piston. I don't know if it'll fit. We can use an old piston to brace up. So that's pretty solid, so we need to back the piston assembly out, because that's not supposed to be like that. So we'll take a look. All our rings are spinning, so there's no apparent reason as to why it would be acting that way. Check our ring ends again. Reposition the ring ends. Check our arrows. We can even reposition our ring compressor up higher up on the rings. And just like that, we got it all in. So, went in kind of all at once. Feels like we're on the cam journal, or connecting rod journal quite easily. I'll try to clean a rag at the hand, but I don't. So we'll get this kind of lightly cleaned up, and then we'll take our connecting rod cap, and these face. The good news about these is that they've got a notch that's different on each side, so you can't really confuse them. I think you could confuse them though with the opposite side, so you'll want to keep that in mind. We'll just spin these in finger tight, and then we'll break out the torque wrench and tighten these down to, I believe it's 25 foot-pounds. I have to check the specs again, but I'm pretty certain it's 25 that we did yesterday, I think. So I'll check the manual again, and then we'll torque these down. Okay, so now we've got it in. But what we're going to do to make it easier to reach these bolts, we'll turn this engine over. And if you'll remember, this side is facing the right side of the UTV. This is the front end of the engine. So this spins counterclockwise from this direction. So we'll just take it, spin it over until we have easy access to both of those journals. You have it, easy access there. And it's a 12mm socket. We're going to torque it down 25 foot-pounds. I don't think you'll be able to see this, but here, let's see if I can. There we go. We'll torque these in increments of 5, 15, and 25. So got 5 there. 15 on that one. That's 25 on that one. Look at it again. 25 on that one. We'll also check our others since they're easy to reach. They were definitely a little loose. I really wish I had a reversible gauge, but I don't, so we'll just live with what we have, because it's better than what we don't have. That one really doesn't want to fit on. We'll need to turn the engine over just a touch. Now, I've heard you don't want to go backwards with an engine, and I'm not 100% sure why that is. But I've tried to avoid going backwards with the engine whenever I can. And these are really easy to slip off of, so keep that in mind. Alright, we're at 25 on everything. So now we'll take our little pipe wrench If you're going to put a pipe wrench, try not to booger anything up, but put it on this part, since this is not a bearing surface. This is just going to be clamped on for the clutch housing. Just take it, spin it over. You don't feel any binding. Feels like we did good. So now we're ready to put on our cover. So cover here, still kind of dirty on the outside. I didn't want to pressure wash it. I wish we had like a hot tank or something. I wiped out the internals and the insides, so we're good on that. I'll just oil up these journals. And these ones do not have a removable bearing, so if this ever was to go bad, you'd either have to get a new front cover or get something like that. So we're just going to dry fit this here real quick. Be sure everything lines up. Lift the motor up. Got a bunch of little idler pulleys and that cam. Let's see, I can see the cam mating in. It did. Cam may not have made it in as far as I can tell. So let's see. Get to this point. We can pull our water pump here. Looks like it's lining up though. So that's all dry fitted and that went together. And we just press our gear in there. Now we'll take our engine, set it back down on the stand, get our bar out, spin, and we can see that our water pump is spinning. So that's a good sign. The gears are all meshing in there. So now that that cover is dry fitted, we're gonna need later, I'll pull it off and then we'll get some RTV. It's that Permatex, great stuff, 90-minute gasket maker. It's really good. I know they make a full gasket, and if I had one I'd use it, but I couldn't find one on eBay. They might have some on eBay, but I couldn't find any at the time. So we're just going to do Permatex on that. So now what we're going to do is get the head laid on. Now I cleaned up and decked both surfaces with just some 250 and 300 grit sandpaper. We have our brand new head gasket here, and we've got our reworked cylinder head. I went through, and just to be certain, I replaced both oil seals, or valve seats, valve guide seats I should say. Replaced both of them. Got these valves nice and smooth. So, and I also lapped them lightly on both sides. We got it all cleaned out. It's got a little bit of carbon, that's just surface, so it doesn't bother me. So we'll take our gasket here, and these gaskets are picky which side of head they go on because of the way the dowels orient. You need to lay on this one. Both dowels are in the head. There's no real rhyme or reason. Sometimes the heads, they retain the dowels, sometimes, or the deck retains the dowels, sometimes the head retains the dowels. It's just kind of a flip of a coin, but you're going to want to take whichever side has a good dowel surface. Take your head gasket, lay it on like that. Got both sides. Make sure our fire ring here is perfectly good. Wipe down this surface. We'll run over it one last time. Be sure it's good and clean, grease free. Any little anything can cause a head gasket failure, and we want to try to eliminate that as much as possible. So now we'll take our head, fit it on until we feel both dowels lock in. And I'll be able to take our head bolts, which I've got over here. And these head bolts are all various sizes, so you'll want to be aware of which ones put, or maybe they're all the same size. No, I think it's the other head has one bolt that's longer than the others. So keep that in mind when you do that front head on the engine. these bolts are all the same, so it doesn't really matter. And there's, oh, drop that down the wrong side. Make sure that's locked in. Up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these guys, and I'll get out my. What am I gonna grab? I'm gonna grab just a socket and a small extension. And I like threading in head bolts by hand, getting them all the way down by hand. Be sure we don't have any cross threading. Never use an impact on these to get them fully torqued down. You could use an impact, I suppose, a really light impact, just to get them buzzed down, but I still prefer hand. Just a lot less chance of ruining something, especially since we've come this far. Got one there. And this one's kind of special. It doesn't actually allow a 1/2 inch 12 millimeter to fit. So we're gonna need to get a 3/8 drive 12 millimeter on there. Nope, a spark plug hole. So yeah, we'll get these threaded in. And once we get these threaded in, then we are able to set in, well, I'll lightly torque them, and then we'll set in our push rods and be sure our push rods are fine. I suppose I should have showed you guys how to set the cam, but we can show that again. Basically, it only goes in really one way. Let me see if I get that. So this is the 12 millimeter. We have 12 millimeter with a 1/2 inch drive, and then 12 millimeter with a 3/8. 3/8 is the only one that's going to fit. Let's see. I don't have anything 3/8 drive at the moment, so we'll leave this one alone for now. What I can do is grab my just regular breaker bar and just tighten these just enough to kind of seat the head on. And as you can see, I'm not putting that much force in it at all, just enough so that the head doesn't move. Get these on, and then we'll grab our 2 push rods. Get these out of our box. I want to wipe off both of these really good. Be sure there's no silt. Valve train components are especially picky about stuff like silt and sand. You're going to want to look down. I don't think you'll be able to capture it on the camera, but you'll want to catch that lifter and be certain you're on the lifter. And these ones are light enough, the spring's light enough, you can just reach in and seat it by hand. This one's a little trickier because it's really hard to see. This one looks like the cam has some lift on it, so we need to turn our motor over. Yeah, that had lift. So now we've taken the lift off of this. I'm able to set that in like so. So now we got a little play in this one. This one just started to open, so that's why there's no play there. Now we'll check to be sure that both of them open and close correctly. As you can see, both of them are opening and closing. I'll grab a spark plug. I had one laying here. We'll put the spark plug in to kind of shut off any air leak through the spark plug hole, and then we'll check to be sure we have a good suction on the downward stroke and good exhaust pressure out of the exhaust stroke. Be sure we got our cam positioned right. It'll be, I already was able to tell on this side, so I know it's good, but we'll just double check to show you guys. So see. So yeah, it sucks everything out of there. Now that's compression stroke. And then we have our exhaust stroke. See if I can show you guys. Yeah. So here. Oh, dropped it. I've done that about, I don't know, 10, 15 times already today. That's about par for the course. Anyway, see if I can get that to show you guys. Yeah, so it's blowing out just fine. Yeah, blowing out really nice. Yeah, so we've got everything all set on the cam there. I do feel a slight suction on, or maybe a slight leak on this, so we'll check that again here real quick. Yeah, we've got a, feels like the, so there's intake stroke. Yeah, we've got a leak. So we got to pull this head again because our valve isn't seating. And this is why you want to check these, because every now and again, even though you installed it and lapped it, it doesn't seal. Not sure why, but we'll pop this head off and then we'll show you guys what exactly is causing this valve not to seat. So we've got the head pulled off, and what we're going to do now is pull off the intake side, since that's where I felt the compression leaking out of. We could have a bent valve. It's not out of the realm of possibility. These heads are so soft, you're able to just work them out with fingers, which isn't the easiest thing to do, but it's possible. So just work that out. There we go. Lift our valve seat and our two retainer clips out of the way. We're able to take our head gasket out of the way, lift the valve off, take a look at it. What I do see is a lot of dust that collected. So somewhere or another, our box that we stored these in wasn't exactly dust proof. So we'll wipe this down, wipe down the insides of this combustion chamber. Look what we had, all dirty in there. Not sure why that would be, but we're gonna clean it all out. Not the cleanest of working environments, as you can see.
Terrible.
Yeah. So now what we're gonna do is drop the old valve back in. And I think what we'll do is we'll run a little lapping compound on here. Lap up these valves. We have our Permatex valve lapping compound. Take just a dab of it. It was way more than I wanted, but we'll just kind of scrape it off. Alright, now we'll take our valve, just drop it in. And what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to grab a drill, so hold on and I'll be right back. Okay, so I'll show you guys what's happening. This is our compression stroke. That's oil, and look at all those leaks we have. That's not good. And here I'll keep cranking. We'll eventually hit a stroke. It should let most of the oil out. And then this is a compression stroke. And look what it's doing. So we have a really leaky valve here. So we got to pull this head again, guys. I can tell, I felt both of them. The exhaust valve is fine. This intake valve is pretty badly off. So we're going to go ahead, pull the head again, and try to reground.